Hello, this is Gary at Jack Raven Bushcraft. Thank you for watching our video. This week I'm going to talk about identifying trees in the winter. In my view, the ability to identify trees is a really important skill in bushcraft. So, for example, we might want to be aware of wood, tree species that give wood that is particularly good for firewood, or indeed the opposite, tree species that we want to avoid burning because maybe it spits or the smoke coming from it is toxic. It might be that we want to understand which trees we're looking at in terms of bow drilling, so some are probably easier than others. So the barks of some trees we could use for tinder, for cordage making, all of these things. So understanding what it is we're actually looking for is going to inform us when we're trying to carry out those particular tasks or activities. Now, it is probably the case that it is going to be easier to identify trees when they are in leaf, so that those leaves are going to be a really big clue as to what it is you are looking at. However, in the winter, if we're certainly with deciduous trees, they're not going to be in leaf, so we're going to have to look at other things to determine what it is we are looking at. So that could be things such as the bark, the buds, the structure of the tree, those kinds of things. In terms of the structure of the tree, I want to try to keep it relatively straightforward. So do the branches, twigs, buds and so on grow out opposite each other, so kind of like this, or do they grow out alternate, so kind of spiraling their way around the tree or the branch, etc. So when you're trying to figure out whether they're this kind of opposite or alternate approach, you'll need to look at several branches or buds or twigs and so on, because sometimes these things can get knocked off, and so looking at a few will really kind of solidify that for you. So for example, here stood next to a field maple, and can we see here these little twigs are growing out directly opposite each other from this stem. So that's the case with all maples, so sycamore included in that, elder, ash, spindle, dogwood, some of these ones. So about a quarter of our native tree species are opposite. So if you're finding a tree where you've got this opposite structure going on, that's narrowing it down quite considerably straight away. So you know that it's going to be one of those kind of maybe 10-12 species of tree. We can see quite clearly that the twigs are growing out directly opposite each other. I'm stood next to a hawthorn now. So hawthorn is alternate in its structure. So I have a branch here or twig here, and then there's another one growing out at about 90 degrees to it further up, and then there's another one growing a bit further up again and at 90 degrees to it, and so on. So it's kind of working its way up the branch. So we have a little side branch coming out here. The next one along is at 90 degrees to it. The next one is again at 90 degrees, and so on. Understanding if the structure of the tree is one of those opposite or alternates is going to help you narrow down what it is you're looking at, especially if it's a species where the structure is opposite. Another feature that will help us to identify a tree is the bark. So if you were to give a child some paper and a load of crayons and ask them to draw a tree, what they're probably going to do is a big green fluffy cloud with a brown trunk on it. The reality is that most trees don't actually have a brown trunk. They're various other colours, but taking an understanding, a note of those colours, again, it's going to be another thing that will help you with identifying your tree. Just be aware that trees can look different depending on their age. So, you know, a bit like people, really. So I'm stood here next to a ash, which is, looking at the size of it, I'd guess this is about 30 years old. So when this was younger, the bark would have been a little bit grayer, whereas now I think it's kind of a greeny but beigey kind of colour going on with it. So the colour of a tree's bark can change as it ages. Birch do this as well. Quite often with birch, you'll see them when they're young, and they can be a little bit pinky or purpley, or another one that can be somewhat beige. So the colour can change as a tree matures. But it leads us into another aspect of bark, and that's the texture of the bark. So some things can be quite smooth. So this is, you know, this ash behind me now, this looks relatively smooth. Others can be more textured, they can be fissured, those kinds of things. So with ash, whilst they start off and they can be relatively smooth, as they mature, the bark does become much more fissured. And so it's worth knowing that that things can change as they age, because when you're looking through your tree identification book, it might show you an ash with fissured bark on it, and so you might think, well, it isn't ash then, because the bark looks different. Well, in the book, they might have taken a photograph of a mature ash, and the one you're looking at could be an immature ash, something along those lines. So look at the colour and the texture of the bark. That's going to give you, again, big clues as to what it is you are looking at. Another really useful feature to help us identify trees in the winter is going to be the buds on those trees. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to looking at the buds. So what size are they? What shape are they? What colour are they? Do they protrude outwards from a branch, or do they lay flat against the twig, against the branch? So all of these things combined are going to start giving you those clues as to what it is you are looking at. As a quick recap, there are things that you can look at on a tree to help you determine what species it might be, other than the leaves. So think about the structure. So is it opposite or is it alternate? Think about the bark. What colour is the bark? What texture is the bark? Take a look at the buds. Again, what colour are they? What shape are they? What size are they? Are they laying flat against the twig? Are they poking out from the twig? So all of these features in combination are going to help you to understand what it is you are looking at. I hope that is of use to you, something that you can incorporate into your bushcraft skill set. I'll try my best to get some more content out in the next week or so. Make sure you don't miss out on that. You can subscribe either to our blog or to our YouTube channel, either of which are Jack Raven Bushcraft. Until then, take care.